Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I would like to share, to ask all of us to adhere to a kind of gentleman agreement concerning the modalities and organization of this webinar. I will be kindly asking all participants who are not speaking to mute their microphones for a better hearing, and also to switch off their videos. Those who have questions can use the chat box to write their questions, and our colleague Mam Omar Diop from New Delhi office will make us the honor to synthesize those questions and convey them to the participants, to the speakers. Some of them, of course, can be answered directly. I will ask speakers to have a look from time to time to that box and then answer those questions that they think can be answered directly. And some of them will be raised to speakers. Okay. So I will be asking also speakers to abide by the time, because we have a time that is fixed. So please abide by the time. Every time I will give you the number of minutes you are allotted to. And before you finish, 2 minutes before the end of the time, I will send you a reminder. I will tell you that you have 2 minutes left. This being said, I think we can go straight to the webinar. So ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear partners, my name is Saliu Sal. I'm the Senior Project Coordinator, Program Coordinator of ICBA. ICBA is the International Institute for Capacity Building. Today's webinar has a scope that goes beyond African borders, as it is jointly organized by institutions coming on one hand from Africa, namely the International Institute for Capacity Building, ICBA, which is based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and AFTRA. AFTRA is the Africa Federation of Teaching Regulatory Authorities, okay, based in Nigeria. And on the other hand, we have institutions from India. One of them is UNESCO New Delhi Cluster Office, and another one is the National Council of Teacher Education, NCTE, and the National Institute of Education Planning and Administration, NIPA. Those institutions have invited representatives, I would say experts, from both regions to share experiences regarding distance education during the school closure due to the COVID-19 crisis. We initially had 5 countries, but due to a last-minute conflict, we now have representatives from 4 countries, 2 per region, who are going to share their experiences. Those representatives are Professor Pranati Panda, Professor and Head of School Standards and Evaluation, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, NIPA. Professor Saroj Sharma, Chair of the Committee of Open Education Resources for Teacher Educators and Teachers, National Council of Teacher Education, NCTE. And from Africa, regarding the speakers, we have Mr. Enoch Rabotapi, Chief Responsible for Teacher Development in the Ministry of Basic Education in South Africa. We have also Professor Peter Barasa, lecturer at Moi University in Kenya. Each of those speakers will be given, as I said, 10 minutes to talk about related experience in their countries. But to start, I'm going to give the floor to the Director of the International Institute for Capacity Building, Dr. Yumiko Yokozeki, for her welcoming remarks. So Dr. Yumiko, if you can hear me, the floor is yours for your welcoming remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salu. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, my computer stopped working, so I am connecting from my telephone. I hope it's okay. So thank you very much. And also Professor Padma, Dr. Kasberi, and the Professor Manati, and as well as Professor Saroji and Professor Steve, Mr. Enoch Patapi, and Professor Peter Barasa. This is a wonderful occasion where Indo Africa discussion on sharing experiences of teachers during COVID-19 is taking place. This is jointly organized by ICBA, UNESCO New Delhi Cluster Office, in collaboration with AFTRA, NCTE in India, and also NIPA in India. The COVID-19 crisis has disrupted education in an unprecedented way. Nearly 191 countries closed their schools. Now some are reopening, but affecting 1.5 million students and over 63 million primary and secondary teachers. Governments have had to act rapidly to meet the challenge to continue providing quality education in the new environment, continue learning, where face-to-face pedagogy is no longer possible, and where teachers lack skills related to ICT, distance education, and education emergency. Now, so we have enormous challenges, but Africa and India have so much in common in history, culture, and it is indeed very timely that this experience sharing webinar is planned and organized. Both in Africa and India, percentage of students impacted by nationwide closure is estimated to be slightly above the global figure, which is currently standing at 91.4% of all students. This situation is forcing governments and educators to find a quick solution to ensure the continuity of quality education at all levels of education. This webinar gives us the opportunity to share best practices and also challenges, move specifically in the area of teacher support and how to use ICT to continue to provide a quality education to overcome COVID-19 related school closure. We have a high level of speakers to speak on these issues, both from Africa and India. And I would like to thank all of you in advance for taking time in your busy schedule. We're grateful for accepting our invitation and joining us to share the experience and expertise. And finally, I'd like to say a small word of thanks to all the people who organized this wonderful seminar. So thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to learning a lot from this. Over to you, Saliu.
Director of ICBA. Yes, we have high-level speakers. We have the honor to receive high-level speakers both from Africa and India. For the sake of the keynote speech, we have two speakers. First, we have Dr. Sabir Bedi, Secretary Central Information Commission, former chairperson of National Council of Teacher Education in India. So Dr. Bedi, you have the floor for your keynote speech for 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
But my camera is not turning on. So how do I work that out? Do you want, will you be giving me permission for that?
Yes, if you can see you, fine. But if you have problems with the video, you can just speak, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm not sure whether you can see me or not because my camera is not showing, but
Dr. Bedi, you can just click on the camera, on the icon camera.
I did. It says turn camera on, but then says video is not working. We could not use your webcam. It was working just fine before the meeting started. Maybe there's something wrong now. But anyway, so thank you very much for inviting me for this this wonderful exchange program, and where I really thank Mr. Omar for organizing it and putting us together, the International Institute of Capacity Building in Africa and UNESCO New Delhi to discuss something which is extremely important at this point in time. Just before I start, I would like to put in perspective what is the situation of India over the last two decades. And in this, I would like to explain that we have had a lot of effort we have put in a lot of effort to organize access for children in India to reach schools in the last 2 decades, which has physically improved the children reaching schools and teachers also reaching schools. And this has improved the gross enrollment ratio and the net enrollment ratio over the last 2 decades in a remarkable manner. Right to Education Act has made education a fundamental right, and students are being given this opportunity to learn. And this is largely, I'm talking in the context of school education and school teacher education. And equity has been ensured in a large way through rural, but there is a little rural and urban dichotomy in the equity sector, because the quality, that brings us to the question of quality. Now, we have access, equity, and quality, which are the 3 pillars of good school education. And when we talk about quality, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that quality means good quality teachers. And I think both in Africa and in India and in some other countries, the next political, financial, and time investment should be in teacher education, preparing better quality teachers for the world. And we should exchange as many good practices as possible to ensure that we have good teachers. In India, NCTE is the apex body to decide about the teacher education, the teacher curriculum, and teacher qualifications. So this body takes care of what are the qualifications that a teacher should have when she or he is appointed as a teacher, what the curriculum should look like, and what should be the what should be all the parameters for deciding teacher education and running colleges. I would like to share with you a very quick project. Quickly, I would like to share with you a project where I want to say that we are planning to open a model teacher education institute, or convert one existing teacher education institute into a model institute, in which government, the private sector, the NGOs, and the student bodies, principals of the schools, all will get together and invest their expertise in preparing teachers for the future. This program I have been sharing with Mr. Omar and UNESCO and a lot of other bodies in the country, and everybody has agreed that this is a possibility, because it's a very simple, very straightforward, and an extremely participative model in which we can start good teacher education institutes, region-wise, district-wise, or any other way that we want to, so that we have good teachers in the future. And this program can be taken up by any country. With minor modifications, it can be set up in any country. It is a very, very user-friendly model, as they say. The aim is to prepare a very high-quality teachers who have their first choice is teaching. Like, they do not want to, it is not they become teachers by accident or as the last choice or something. These are students or people willing to be teachers in the very first go. So that is what we are planning. And because of COVID-19, the program has been put back just a little, but I'm sure that other people in the webinar also, and people who are not even participating today, we are a lot of people looking at this program with a lot of expectation, because it is a dynamic, collaborative program to prepare good teachers for the school students. I also would quickly like to share two very good examples of what we have done in school education, and probably we can do it in other states and in other countries also. That we 22 years ago, we started a concept of a model school in every district, which was called Pratibha Vikas Vidyalaya. We started it in the Union Territory of Delhi, and we set up one school where we took children from really economically challenged sectors, and we gave them the good education, good teachers, and good environment. And some of the experiment has lasted 22 years, and it has given some absolutely excellent results for these children who had who really did not have a chance, who really did not have a very big possibility. And we took the children from the schools of government schools only and put them in another government school and tried this experiment. So Pratibha Vikas Vidyalaya is a model which UNESCO has also shared with us, has observed with us, and they have appreciated it. The second,
Dr. Bedi, you have 1 minute to wrap up, please. I'm sorry.
Okay. So I would only say that in COVID-19, we have new challenges. So the access to technology would be a challenge. The quality of engagement and interaction with students by teachers is a challenge. And can online education substitute for classroom ethos? We have to look at that as a challenge. And the cognitive, social, and emotional development of the student has to be understood, because in the virtual world, the student has as much control over the dynamic of the classroom and the body language and everything as the teacher has, and we have to have new parameters of assessment. So when we discuss today and in future discussions, I would like to say that let us talk of these challenges today also, and in future to see whether we can continue working together.
NCT means the National Council of Teacher Education establishing.
Yes. I can't hear you.
Okay, Dr. Bedi, can you wrap up, please, in 30 seconds? And can we let her finish, please?
These are the new challenges for teacher education, and thank you for inviting me. It is a great opportunity. I look forward to the discussions that follow.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bedi, for that very informative presentation. You've given us an overview of the situation over the last 2 decades, and you insisted, and I do agree with you, on the necessity to have good quality teachers. And thank you for offering to exchange good practices between the two regions, and for sharing with us the program regarding the Teacher Training Institute. I look forward to the practical side of that exchange. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to give the floor to Professor Steve Nyoko-Cha, Executive Director, Academics of AFTRA, the Africa Federation of Teaching Regulatory Authorities. So Professor Steve, you have the floor. The presentation is already displayed.
Yeah, thank you, colleagues. My pleasure. Mine is to speak briefly about the situation in Africa. I hope I'm being heard very well.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Professor.
All right. First, this webinar tackles issues about teacher support for online and digital platforms, and to some extent tertiary educators, and then inclusivity, particularly people in rural areas and disability contexts, those people lacking digital infrastructure and internet, and then issues about teaching and learning and their qualities. I believe that experiences that will come from the discussion will leave us more informed about the extent of teacher support for online and digital platforms. We know that Africa has a lot of challenge, and this has been discussed throughout this period. But we are looking forward to where we could hear about best practices and improvements with respect to teacher support for online and digital platforms. Tertiary education is not completely left out, but we know they're a bit independent, so much attention has been paid to the primary and secondary education. But we also want to know what is happening to tertiary education and tertiary teachers and the kind of support they are having from their own institutions. And then the issue of rural and disability contexts. We know that most people are actually outside the domain of the urban areas and privileged class. Sometimes 60, 70% are actually within the rural areas and with the rural poor. How are we carrying along those children? And then the issue of quality. I'm happy the last speaker mentioned about that. When we come to Africa, we've been working together with African Union. AFTRA is an intergovernmental organization coordinating activities of ministries of education and those national agencies established by laws of their various countries to regulate and professionalize teaching. And so we work as a subset of the education sector of the African Union, and we are member of the Specialized Technical Committee on Education and various education committees of the African Union. We are also the co-chair of Teacher Development Cluster of the African Union. And because of that, we promote the framework that the African Union has issued because we are part of that framework. And it reads DOTSS. So anytime we discuss in Africa about education and COVID, we want to talk about digital connectivity of schools, and we want to talk about online learning, which I have said earlier. And we also want to know what is the support to teachers as facilitators and motivators of learning, because the students and pupils cannot all learn on their own. And the last S is skills. And we also want to see the kind of learning going on to be what is termed the 360 degrees learning, all around skills and all that could actually impact in different dimensions of the learner. We have related matters that seem sometimes to be drawback or issues we've been discussing. To be honest, we've had close to 10 webinars since COVID, covering Africa, global, and all that, and we are still having them. What is the place of our curriculum in contributing to education at this time? Because we understand most of the curricula are not digitized. And so people don't even have copy of the curriculum. It's not available online. So how do people go into online learning when the curriculum is not digitized? We have centralized administration of education. No province or state moves before the other. In West Africa, the West African Examination Council has postponed the exam for school leavers. So why we say online education, exactly what aspect are we talking about? Because centralized administration of education means that, no matter how fast you move, you are still like marking time on a spot because you have to wait for the majority who are not learning anything. We know there is focus on hunger and survival. And in previous discussion, we've also advised that the advertisement for COVID survivors should sometimes also include the need for online education, because we only hear or talk about it on webinar. We don't hear about it on television and radio. All we hear about is COVID and survivor, but we think education should be next to that survivor. And those non-governmental organizations and countries can sponsor some also slogans and jingles and advertisements to talk about education, which we have been talking about online, but the impact is not felt offline. We had discussions about, with regards to lack of internet connectivity and electricity, This is a time to be creative and look at free resources like creation of solar energy. And we also look at some, in previous discussion, the UNESCO regional architecture, 3 basic aspects of that. How can they all go on online? The issue of curriculum that I have mentioned, assisted learning and continuous assessment. What people are learning at this time, can it be continuous? I mean, can assessment be part of it, and can that assessment feed into the whole thing? So bottom line is what works. We have heard about television, radio, and all sorts of modes. And I remember in previous discussion or webinar, mathematics teachers kind of frowned at teaching of mathematics using radio because they felt it's unsuitable. So whatever is the case, all we want is what works. And the ball is in the court of our speakers representing the various countries to give us grassroots information. And we know schools are resuming. And I've heard in the media from South Africa and some other countries, teachers union protesting that the countries are not yet ready. We want to know the opinion of teachers and the safety of students. The COVID stuff is still spiking, it's still rising, and it's predicted we'll reach the peak around August, September, depending on the country. And even when it reaches the peak, it will still take 2-3 months. And some say we will live for it for a long while until vaccines are found. And so the safety of students remains the best, even though the government is talking about preparations to ensure safety when students return. How safe are the students going to be? I'm sure teachers union, I listened to the leaders of teacher union in South Africa and some other countries argue about their fears about resumption of schools. These are part of issues we want to hear from those who will be speaking representing the various countries. Once again, it is my pleasure that we've got this huge number of people tuning in, and it is the pleasure of AFTRA to be part of this project. AFTRA remains committed to changing the course of teaching and learning in Africa, and it has done that so very well with the kind of intimate relationship it has with UNESCO, IGBA, and UNESCO New Delhi, and all the regional offices of UNESCO in Africa. So once again, thank you very much, and I hope we would be doing justice to some of these and many more issues. Thank you very much, Sally.
Thank you very much, Professor Steve, for that really informative presentations and for explaining some important points like the dots from African Union. Actually, yes, as you said it, you are the co-chair of the African Union Teacher Development Cluster, okay? And you also are a member of the International Task Force on Teachers for Education 2030. This is good to mention. And thank you for raising the questions at the end of your presentation that are conveying some dilemma related to some concerns regarding the reopening of schools. I think maybe, hopefully, we'll find some answers to those questions you have raised. So thank you very much. Now comes the time to give the floor to the Director of UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa, who had made us the honor to attend this webinar. So, Ms. Anne-Therese Ngondiata, if you are in place, I give you the floor for 2 minutes to say hello.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Probably I wouldn't have to say too much. Let me just appreciate this wonderful opportunity that's created for cross-fertilization of ideas. A lot of issues have been raised by our colleague Steve, and I've also listened carefully to the speaker from India, who really also gave an expose on the issues. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, and we can hear you.
You can hear us? Okay. Now, and generally all I want to say is this pandemic caught us all unawares, unprepared, and therefore it is very important that we look at responses and how we could learn from each other. given the context has been presented by our colleague Yumiko. And the important issue here is to understand how the teachers, what are the teachers' experiences, what can they contribute to it, because in the rush to really come up with the responses, the voices of the teachers were not so heard, their contributions not so very much, reflected in the responses. It's all now being done to really correct in some cases. And we know essentially this is a period where in the rush to respond, we should not lose sight of the fact that there are those unreached populations, which has been also touched upon. Some of the solutions that have really been tried and tested, although it helps, it is not something that is really durable or that could be responsive enough to the issues of quality, equity, and access. And therefore, as I stay on to listen, I believe we need to really give more time for the preparedness of the teachers, give them ICT skills, and also look at what could be a game changer. This is really my storyline. I always talk about not only focusing on internet, but intranet, offline low-tech solutions that would be interactive, but that would require that we make new investments in education. This is the moment to capitalize on it. As Steve said, in responding to the pandemic, it is not necessarily just looking at it as a health crisis. It's really a whole of society issue, and it has touched every sector. But the way that we can build back better is to focus on the investments on education, because it exposed the weaknesses of our education system, but it also exposed the infrastructure weaknesses of our various sectors. And so I hope this is an opportunity to learn from India, and India learn from us as we build back better. Because it's not to say let's try some of these quick fixes. Let us look at what is wrong with our education system, what are the needs of teachers, and how do we really empower and capacitate teachers to really respond better, to also develop professionally. And should we have a recurrence of a situation like this, we would not be caught unawares in this way. So I just want to thank you all for coming together, and I look forward to learning some more on how probably we can improve what we are already doing, which we already say has its own deficits, and not to really in any way close our eyes on the fact that we must confront the issue, not only with government, but also with all the partners. A very collaborative approach is what we require, and that is the message we are getting from COVID-19. It's a global issue. When something happens around the globe, it touches everybody. So therefore, development should be one that is very consultative, collaborative, and public-private partnerships come into play to ensure that wherever response we give, we place the focus on the human capital, because without the people, we cannot fix this problem. We cannot really address the issue of the pandemic. Neither can we build back better. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure joining you, and I'm here to learn some more on how we can really build back better for post-COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director, for that advocacy to have teachers better prepared to face that situation, and for the PPP, public-private partnership, that can help us go forward. And thank you also for inviting all of us to avail ourselves of the what you usually call low-hanging fruit, meaning making better use of intranet rather than. So thank you very much, Director. Now I'm going to give the floor to the first speaker. This is Professor Pranati Panda. Professor Panda is Head of School Standards and Evaluation, National Institute of Education Planning and Administration, NIPA. So Professor, you have the floor for 10 minutes. Share your experience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to Dr. Yumiko, Dr. Bedi, Dr. Steve, Ms. Anna, and it has really created a momentum for the deliberation on Indo Africa discussion sharing experiences on teachers during COVID-19. When I was reflecting on COVID-19 and education in India, it's a very, very complex situation. And India responded to the COVID-19 with the closure of 1.53 million schools in India to save the life of 253 million learners and 8.91 million teachers. And closure of school and university was the initial step towards this global pandemic. Public examinations were shifted, followed with social distancing and considering home as a safe zone for all our learners, teachers, and teacher educators. And both the federal and state government are taking immense measure and preparing school to meet the learning needs of the learners through multi-pronged measures. And teachers are considered as the frontline warrior to address the educational needs of the diversified learners with equity and quality. And when we are focusing on the teacher, we need to understand the teaching force in India. The teaching force in India comprises of three categories by nature of appointment: regular, contract, and part-time, having differential service condition and salary. So the teaching community, their professional preparedness, impact of COVID on their salary service condition is a major issue, which is now we are deliberating internationally. And if we look at nearly 7.7 million teachers, out of 8.9 million teachers are above 55 years of age, possibly not exposed to the kind of technology, online learning, ICT we are talking about. And 85% of the teachers have got the professional qualification. Out of this total number, quite good number are located in the rural sector. And if I'm looking at teachers are under pressure to develop the content, transact the content, and also use already available online resources. When I was mapping out the kind of investment we have done on teachers through different professional development program for last few years, we have really achieved our target, or we can say we have really invested a lot on teachers. Federal government has been sponsoring few centrally sponsored schemes such as NISTA, which is a very long-term training program. There is also one important program, we call it National Program on School Standard and Evaluation, that is Shala Siddhi, how do we improve the performance of school and school leadership program. One hand, the country is addressing the face-to-face professional need of the teacher. On the other hand, online courses, open education resources, introduction of e-Pathshala by NCERT and many others are in operation as part of the quality initiative, or we can say the professional upgradation of the teachers. In spite of having this strong base of online platform material, we need to look at how these platform material are possibly facilitating the current crisis of COVID. My analysis, which I have done, my analysis looking at the use of ICT and online courses, though in spite of our initiative, we need to critique bit about the material what we are offering to our teachers to keep their motivation intact, capture the voices what Anna was mentioning, and also supporting them to transact the content in the rightful manner. When I was analyzing, it is, I'm just think it's a cluttering of overloaded material without delineating the quality material for the teachers. So one challenge is transacting the content come pedagogic knowledge along with the clutters, or we can say huge material overloaded with information. It's a major challenge for the Indian teacher to delineate the material, use it for the particular content and theme, whether it is teacher or teacher educator. I think it's a major challenge for the developing countries. Possibly, I'm hoping, because I was coordinating the our international diploma, many African participants used to share their experiences. We have similar experiences. When we look at how the government and education sector are responding to address the educational needs of learners, teachers, and teacher educators during COVID and post-COVID, we need to look at in the two ways. That is, during COVID, I think we need to appreciate the initiative taken by our government teachers, teacher educator, in collating material, transacting material, but there is enough scope for improving the material to for the professional support of the teacher. So if we look at during the COVID period, we have created access to online content material to teachers, almost all government teachers by the state government and learners also. My interaction with few teachers here in Delhi, they are using extensively web portals, social media, as well as WhatsApp group. But India with the diversity, how rural children would access those online material would continue as a major challenge. But COVID-19 is not affected to a greater extent in many northeastern state, many rural areas. So opening up school, early opening of the school could be one of the possibility. And many teachers, we need to acknowledge that many teachers are taking initiative to prepare the content, local specific activities for transaction of the subjects, or you can say, but it's not everywhere. Few teachers, very proactive teachers, are working on this. So this is the current scenario. Everything is continuing with the support of the state government. Many non-governmental NGOs are also supporting in this endeavor. But when I was looking at post-COVID initiative, somehow India has to look in a very, very different perspective. Because
Professor, you have one minute, please.
Yes,
1 minute,
quickly, I will just wrap up. There are few suggestions I have to make quickly. I will make it. The India necessitates multi-pronged strategy with a very collaborative framework. My first recommendation is that India should come out with a national framework on school education to address the COVID-19 needs. Lead role could be played by the National Council for Teacher Education or Government of India, and use of ICT to address the professional need of the teacher, keeping in view the disparity, diversity, equity, and to address the learning needs of the diversified student. And preparing teacher educator as mentor to the teacher is continuing as a major challenge. How do we prepare online material with appropriate content, quality content, along with lot of pedagogic strategies? Fourth of my recommendation is that teacher motivation is very, very key at this critical juncture. How do we keep the motivation or support the teachers to enhance their motivation to engage in the activity of teaching learning processes during this difficult time? And my last suggestion, which I have been working in this area along with many other agencies like UNICEF, UNESCO, National Institute of Disaster Management, that is the school safety. How do we change the culture of safety culture post-COVID? Hand wash to toilet to taking all precaution, creating a cultural shift and institutionalization of school safety across the school, that is 1.53 million school. At the end, in spite of all the initiative, India has to take more major initiative to address the equality and equity because quite good number of school teachers are in the rural sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Panda, for that brilliant presentation where you shared the immense measures that the government is taking to address the situation. You have also shared the challenges the education system is facing, and those challenges are very much similar to the challenges African school system is confronting. And you shared also some recommendations, among which the teacher motivation in the school setting. Thank you very much. And now we're going to give the floor to Professor Saroj Sharma. Professor Saroj Sharma is the chair of the Committee of Open Education Resources for Teacher Educators and Teachers, National Council of Teacher Education. So, Professor, you have the floor.
Yes. Dr. Yumiko, our own Dr. Sadbir Bedi, Professor Steve, Professor Panda, my fellow speakers from South Africa, Cameroon, Kenya, and all learned participants. Warm greetings from my side. First of all, I would like to congratulate the convener of this event, Omar, and his entire team for organizing this webinar on such an enchanting topic, and it is direly needed in today's scenario also. When we discuss about the present COVID situation and status of education, and that to online education, because we don't have any choice but to just rely upon this online mode of teaching learning process. So we should see it in a very positive note. Unless we look into this entire process into blessing in disguise, we will not be able to put forth, look beyond the boundaries and look ahead. So I think we should discuss how to make the present scenario more teacher friendly, more make the user online resources more user friendly. So these should be our objective. When I look forward to the tertiary sector of education in India, I will go to a little backdrop of the current scenario. Government of India has taken initiative in this area long ago. And actually, online mode of education is not very new area for us. Before this pandemic period, we were discussing on Swayam portal, Diksha portal for tertiary education system. Ministry of Human Resource Development and NCT has also initiated on Diksha portal. Diksha is totally devoted for teaching, learning, capacity building program. And the Swayam portal is looking for the educational reforms online. It is a kind of repository of resources. It is an online repository of resources, and it caters from 9th standard to post-graduation level. And also MHRD has tried with Swayam Prabha. It is a DTH channel. 32 DTH channels were totally devoted to teacher education. So these were the initiative from Government of India. And as Professor Panda has also said about various school education sector, what e-Pathshala is there and what NCT and other NCERT and other apex bodies are doing, I will discuss few things which we have initiated in India. One is e-Vidwan. It is a repository of teachers and researcher, and e-Yantra. E-Yantra is a capacity building project, how to use the apps for teaching learning process. And National Digital Library, it is a library which virtual library which provides more than 1,500 virtual e-content and also journals that are peer reviewed. And again, e-Shodh Sindhu. This is a journal which I was talking. National Digital Library is having a virtual repository, and then spoken talk to teacher program. Talk to teacher program is also one project of MHRD, and then virtual labs. Government has also initiated on virtual labs because for engineering and science students. When I come to teacher education program, recently it was initiation of Dr. Sadhbir Bedi when she was in NCT, she was NCT chairperson. She constituted a committee of open learning resources, OERs. It is a 5-member committee, and a subcommittee of 60 resource persons were also identified this committee. And major objective was is of this committee is to identify open learning resources. As you know, open learning resources are having different licensing process, and these are open to access. That is open education resources. And also we as committee, we have to identify how to guide and counsel our teachers. So we have made 3 objectives as our committee. First, we will open learning resources. And second, how to make it pedagogy friendly, how to convert these open education resources in pedagogic way. So second will be MOOCs. We are working on MOOCs, massive online open courses. So this is also an agenda of NCT, this committee. And third is guidance and counseling. See, in this, I think last 3 months have been a must disaster on a psychological aspect of students as well as teachers. Teachers were busy in making open learning resources, teaching through online mode. Students were also, as Professor Panda was saying, that in school system, both we are facing various challenges also, because access, equity, and quality, that is more that is a thing of concern, and we have to work towards that. So teachers, students, administrators, the whole process, all the stakeholders were involved in this process. So guidance and counseling, it has a mere importance to look after, because various psychological aspects is involved in such kind of teaching learning process. So when I am talking about MOOC, yeah.
Could you wrap up in 2 minutes, please?
Yeah, sure. So when we see the future prospects of such kind of education system where online has become our necessity, it is not by choice. There have been many debates about the goodness of conventional mode and various things involved with online mode, but this is the situation. We don't have any choice but to extract good things of this system and give our students in best possible way. So when I talk about MOOCs, we are trying to start massive online open courses on various skill development, education administration and planning, entrepreneurship, early childhood care education, applied psychology, environment, peace, gender issues. These are the massive online courses on which we can work upon. And there are 4 major aspects that pedagogy, content development, feedback mechanism, evaluation. I think we also have to look into these 4 aspects, how to evaluate, how to take examination through online mode, and how to give them certificate, how to make them skilled, how to make them the psychomotor aspect is also very much important. So because education has 3 aspects: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. And when we talk about affective domain, the student-teacher interaction, the face-to-face mode is lacking. So we have to depend on this mode. Here, the skill development aspect in teacher education is lagging behind. So can we explore such kind of process, such kind of mechanism where we can develop the skill development process, various teaching skills in our teachers, make them more capable, more professional, so that they can face the present day challenges through online mode too. And new
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Just
very
in
much
50 seconds.
for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Sharma, for this information regarding the tertiary level and the resources that are available namely online repository of resources, the program Talk to Teacher, the Talk to Teacher program, and also those resources developed in the framework of the open education resources. Thank you very much. Maybe participants will come back with some questions. I remind participants that they can use the chat box to raise their questions. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to give the floor to the first African speaker among the four speakers, Mr. Enoch Rabotapi, who is the Director of the Basic Education at the Ministry of Basic Education, the department. So, Mr. Rabotapi, if you are ready, I give you the floor.
How much time do I have, Chair? How much time do I have?
You can do it in 8 minutes. Is that okay?
10 minutes. Oh, I don't have 20. Okay. All right.
Okay.
One of the things that COVID-19 has exposed
Hello, Rabotapi, we can't hear you well.
Is the of those who already did. You can't hear me well. Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's becoming better. It's becoming better. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I was saying that one of the things that were COVID-19 be able to was the vulnerability of communities that are already marginalized. When schools were closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to ensure that we continue teaching and learning using the and schools and some of the highly resourced schools were able to continue with teaching and learning during this period. But the marginalized public school that served the poor were the ones who could not provide lessons. And this has provided us with a major challenge. And some of the, I will not speak to the presentation because I don't have time to speak to it. So some of the major challenges that we have had to face is firstly the problem of poor connectivity or lack of connectivity in the rural areas. Secondly, the problem of lack of gadgets, cell phones and other gadgets. Thirdly, the cost of data. Data was a problem in order for people to access online learning. Fourthly, the poor skills levels of our teachers in terms of using ICT was also a challenge. Then we used television and radio to try and provide content to our learners. But of course, the issue of content was a challenge. We didn't have enough content to cover all the grades. So some of the grades we could not really offer tuition. And then also lack of integration. What is being broadcasted through television and radio in some instances was not aligned with what we were required to do in our schools. But there were also opportunities that came up with this challenge. And one of the opportunities was collaboration with the private sector, who pledged funding into education to ensure that we procure gadgets for those who did not have, who ensured that we develop content for areas where we did not have content. So there was a huge investment and focus in education. Now, regarding the issue of data, there were also agreements that we reached with network providers who assisted us to ensure that sites that were carrying education content were 0 rated, so that even the poor learners in poor areas could actually access that data. We have developed also a professional development framework for digital learning. Now, this is a standard that we have developed on ICT. We will be rolling out a teacher development program that will also be linked to a theory of change, through which we are going to be able to support our teachers on how to shift from face-to-face type of tuition to an online. This is to be important because as we are preparing to open our schools, we are using a phased-in approach for the reopening of schools, which therefore means that some of the learners will have to remain at home. And these learners that remain at home, we will have to continue to use radio and television and other online platforms to ensure that we deliver educational content to these learners. Now, regarding the issue of support for the teachers, of course, issues of safety.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you do that in 2 minutes, please? In 2 minutes?
Yes.
Is that okay? Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was timing, I have 4 minutes. Okay, but issues of safety has become one of the big issues. That's why our unions have raised concerns about whether our teachers safe to actually resume school. Secondly is the issue of psychosocial support. We have put measures together with the Department of Health to ensure that learners and teachers who are affected can be provided with support during this time. And finally, we also have what we call teacher centers in our regions. And these teacher centers are equipped with ICT and they have connectivity. So teachers who don't have connectivity where they stay can go to these teacher centers to download content that they require, then that they can use in their schools for offsite. So in summary, what this COVID-19 has done is to assist us to do some of the things that we had been planning to do. We have to fast track them. We have to ensure that everybody is on board, and we have to ensure that we work with our unions, with our parents, with the private sector to ensure that we provide quality teaching and learning in our schools. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Rabo Tapi, for the information regarding the background situation and the challenges and also the recommendation. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to give the floor to Professor Barasa from Moi University of Nairobi, Kenya. So Professor Barasa, you have 7 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you very much. Professor Barasa?
Is it on now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Allow me to correct the impression that Moi University is in Nairobi. It isn't. I'm a professor of Moi University in Eldoret, the second university in Kenya. And I'm currently a deputy principal, charge of academics research in a constituent college of Moi University called Alupe University College. I want to thank the organizers, all of them, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share a few views with my colleagues. And I want to thank the previous speakers without naming them because of time, because they have spoken a lot to what I thought I would say as an experience, generally before I talk about Kenya. I want to thank my colleague from South Africa because your experiences are no different from ours, but it so happens that you appear to be a little ahead of us in terms of preparation preparing teachers and students in this COVID area. Let me take a minute to give the context of Kenya in terms of the education situation as it is. Our schools, like any other country, closed on 15th with the announcement by the president that all schools should be closed. And they were given 3 days, the primary and secondary schools to close, and the universities were told to close by 23rd. So by 23rd, we had 15 million children at home, 10 million primary school kids, 5 million secondary school kids, and about 500,000 university kids, or young men and girls at home. Our challenge became immediate for us because as it is with COVID, Kenya faces a challenge of having said they have 100% transition that they require. You know, education for all, 100% transition. So we are asking ourselves, with classrooms brimming, with students ranging from 60 in a class to over 100 at times, how do we handle this if we go back to the COVID issue? I began by thinking and reflecting on the role of teachers here and where our teachers are at present. And I'll tell you that the Teacher Service Commission, which recruits and looks after teachers in Kenya, has 317,069 teachers employed by the TSC. On top of that, there are 80,000 employed by the Board of Management. Why is this so? Because the TSC has a shortage of 96,345 teachers. By 2023, this will be 120 teachers. So when you begin thinking about COVID education during the COVID time, then we think technology. Technology has enabled a bit of learning for the private schools, and the public schools have done fairly well in the sense that the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development has broadcast courses or programs or information for learners to take up on radio, on TV. But our colleague from, I think, South Africa or Nigeria said the rural areas.
कि ऑनलाइन मैसेज करने के लिए अगर ऑनलाइन टीचिंग है तो हम बच्चों की राइटिंग अप्रोच कैसे सुधार सकते हैं?
Something interfering.
Hello. I'm sorry. There's somebody who has unmuted.
Yes.
You can proceed, please.
With the situation as it is, we must think in terms of what is happening in Kenya. What can Kenya do to be able to continue learning? Our discussion right now in the country is, do we open or don't we open? The president has set up a task force the minister has set up a task force of about 20 people to decide whether we shall open. And our challenge is, our challenge becomes, how do we engage teachers to manage this number of students? Because we must talk about social distancing and so on. So the government has set aside 6.5 billion to recruit an extra 10,000 teachers and 1,000 ICT interns to support digital learning. These digital learning programs.
Can you please wrap up in the next 2 minutes?
Maybe 3 minutes. So the money should go towards getting teachers on board, that these teachers are able to help with the process of bringing the students back to school. The questions are questions of quality, equity, and capacity of teachers. The quality of teaching in terms of e-learning that is going on has been debatable. So the issue is, what did we do right? We closed schools in time so that we didn't do what? We didn't lose students. The CS education has always been there during the briefings, so it has in a way made education a priority. But the bigger issue is, how do we manage online learning. We don't have the capacity for online learning to get to the schools in the rural areas. And indeed, even the current online learning is organized in such a manner that the education channels have the correct content, but there are also people who are providing their own private content, including a member of parliament who chose to set up his own system using Zoom and other methods, platforms to teach. Maybe I should address this issue. How do teachers feel about teaching post-COVID and about opening? The challenge is that the unions, the big unions, the primary school union is not ready to open schools. They say they are not ready. Kupet, which is the secondary school union, says they are ready, we should open schools in terms of a phased approach. Begin with the exam classes and then bring in the others later. Leaders within the country, including the Human Rights Commission, the University Union, say no, we don't open now. It's better to lose a year, an academic year, and be in a position to save lives. So we have the issues.
Professor,
of,
1 minute, please. 1 minute, please.
Yes, we have a challenge in the sense that the teachers themselves don't have the capacity to do online teaching, all of them per se, but I think it is an opportunity for us as a country to begin asking what else can we do to mitigate and meet the challenges that we have today in terms of how best we can get to add value to the process of learning. The opportunities are teacher professional development on mental health and psychosocial support. We also must take advantage in the universities to make our referral hospitals do research on infectious diseases. And then we should put together infrastructure so that we can adjust and deal with issues of hygiene and social distancing. We have two curricula in Kenya, if you allow me a minute. One is a new curriculum.
Please, not a minute, but a few seconds.
Yeah, the new curricula requires parents. And so we must have an engagement, a parent engagement framework that they can assist us in managing the process of ensuring that our children are safe as they go to school. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. I'm sorry to have put the pressure on you, but we have some concerns regarding the time. But thank you for sharing that very informative presentation. Probably participants will come on that. Now come to the next session. This is questions and answers session, which is managed by Omar. Omar will be synthesizing the questions that are raised in the chat box and address them. So Omar, in the next 15 minutes, you can do so.
Thank you very much, Saliu, and thank you to all the presenters, because a lot have been said and it all made a lot of sense and a lot of inputs to this webinar. So I've been monitoring the chat box, but most of the questions have been already answered by the presenters, because there was one on how teachers are being empowered on an online program on counseling. There was another question which talked about how did we ensure equity in online teaching, thinking at the digital divide. And the last one was speaking to what kind of changes are expected on the role of the teachers. So this is what I propose, probably to get back our two keynote if they are around, to give us Professor Steve, if you can come on board, and then we'll hear from Dr. Bedi. If you can just tell us very quickly, how could we have teachers' voices reflected in the COVID-19 responses?
Thank you very much, Omar. Okay.
Professor Steve, are you still on board? Okay. So for the interest of time, Dr. Bedi, are you still on board? All right. Okay, so now I'll direct the questions maybe to the...
Professor Steve is there. Professor Steve is here. Okay.
Professor Steve, can you tell us quickly how could we have teachers' voices reflected in the COVID-19 responses?
Basically, teachers' voices are the voices of their unions, Education International. And I think we may not be thinking about teachers as individuals, but through their unions and the active participation. I don't know if Education International is here, because that is a very global voice of teachers, and then the various unions. I think getting their unions involved at the different levels of action is a primary way of doing it, as that cannot be done by picking, teachers individually. And I have also advised that we've talked so much on webinars and offline. I just look around the environment across the countries and wonder if people are aware about the passion and the sense of urgency that we have. And so I also suggest that, particularly through the unions, although we are hearing the voices now, they are either for or against resumption of schools. But we would want it, as I said earlier, and I said this in previous webinar, for us to reach the critical mass of the people across the countries and regions with somewhere couched messages, such as the ones we have for COVID message itself, about what we are thinking about teaching and learning at this time. That message will reach virtually every teacher, it will reach the critical mass of the public. And I think this will go a long way in raising that tempo that we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Steve. But unfortunately, we didn't get Education International on board for this session, but definitely, I think they should be also contributing to our next webinars. So now I'll propose one question to the Indian team. So Professor Sharma and Professor Praniti Panda. Dr. Bedi has mentioned in her speech that in her remarks that distance learning and online learning students have as much control as teachers. So the students have as much control as teachers when it comes to distance learning. In what ways could we use this as an opportunity to make learning student-centered? If you can come and respond very quickly, Professor Panda, and then after Professor Sharma, please.
I have noted few questions reflected in the comment box. The most important question is changing role and responsibilities of the teacher. It is during COVID or post-COVID. Definitely there would be drastic change in the role of the teacher.
Professor Panda, sorry, I have reserved that one for the African team. So I just directed this one I read out to you just to make it equal in terms of participation. We have a time management problem here.
Okay, you want my concluding views, then what I'm trying to conclude that one thing is that we have been expecting our teacher and learners to be the self-learner. I think this would provide us the opportunity for the learners and teachers to learn together, as well as we have to consult teacher and also support teachers for the local specific interventions, which we are forgetting time and again. We always recommend from above what they need, but we need to listen to them. And teacher union, we need to bring them on board. What kind of changing roles and future teacher responsibility, use of ICT, we need to, I think, work on it in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Panda. Professor Sharma, can you come in, please?
Okay, in 2 minutes, maybe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
As also that online mode education is not new thing in India. We have one open university, Indira Gandhi National Open University. It was established in 1975 and it is working in this area. And University Grant Commission, which is the apex body under Ministry of Human Resource Development, it has also Distance Education Council, and all the universities were working in this particular domain on online mode of education. So if this new scenario could control, I think as Professor Pandya said, the self-discipline is also needed. In that area, in the area of teaching, learning process, online examination, the things are involved. I see it has been very my university, University, we have and we are with our students to different Google Meet and other things. Our experience has been very useful. Structure and digital.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Sharma. Your voice was breaking off. I'm sorry. Maybe the quality of the connection is not that good right now. So one last question, which was, I believe, Mr. Robotapi, if you are around, if you can just give us, respond quickly before we pass on the floor to the closing remarks from Professor Padma. Mr. Robotapi, if you can come in and talk about the changes that are expected on the role of the teacher as in the new normalcy. Please.
Well, firstly, teachers have to be supported psychologically because this is a new thing for them, and they need to have the psychological strength to be able to face it. And then secondly, teachers will have to be supported with the new skill around digital learning. They'll have to be trained on how to use ICT in education. They'll have to be supported with a strong theory of change in terms of how can they actually effect the kind of change that is expected. To work with their leaders, their teacher unions, to ensure that they also assist us in changing the perspectives of the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robert Tapi. So, sorry, everybody, we are having technical issues. If you can just switch off your camera and mute your microphones. Over to you, Saliu, for Professor Padma to come in.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are sorry for this constraint of time, but the questions that are not answered can be carried out to speakers for follow-up. So now we're going to give the floor to Professor Padma Sarangapani for her closing remark. Professor Saranga is chairperson of the Center for Education, Innovation and Action Research at Tata Institute for Social Sciences, Mumbai, India. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really very pleased to be in the company of very learned speakers and fortunate that many of them are known to me. I've interacted with many of you and a few new people from whom I have learned a lot today about what is happening in your own contexts. Both Professor Sharma and Professor Panda have, and of course Dr. Bedi, have given you all a good sense of the Indian context and how we are trying to respond to this situation. I want to pick up a few points that each of the speakers made today and reflect on them, partly from the larger issues that the COVID pandemic has thrown up, but also reflecting on it from our own knowledge and experience of how ICT in education works and whether distance technologies enable us to address the question of quality and access to quality education, which is the core challenge that we are all speaking about today. Dr. Bedi pointed out to us many things about what the NCT is planning to do and reflecting on the situation. But I think the point that she made, which is something for us to think about as we operationalize and use distance technologies, is that really the equation between students and teachers can change in the online medium. In fact, if the online medium works, it is only in contexts where interaction between teachers and students is supported. And generally, technologies that are one-way oriented, just delivering content, are known to be totally falling on their face in the online space. They simply don't result in learning. In fact, this was an important finding of an OECD study which was looking at effectiveness of online and digital learnings. Largely, that study concluded that it doesn't really support good quality gains unless there's a teacher involved in ensuring that the interaction is effective. So I think this panel, keeping the teacher in the center and thinking about how to make online learning work is really important. And Dr. Bedi's point that the equation between student and teachers is really the heart of the question of online learning. I think Steve, in addition to many of the remarks he made, usefully pointed out that teachers in the tertiary sector are equally have to adapt to this new atmosphere. But I think even more fundamental is the equity question and the fact that this is totally dependent on infrastructure provisioning. We cannot forget that the sector has largely been defined by the private education sector, and in whether it is devices, whether it is broadband, it is really controlled by the private sector. And there's a huge, huge role that government will have to play to equalize this space. And I think there is just no escape. No amount of PPP is going to minimize the need for governments to invest in both providing devices and giving access to broadband, which is what our teachers need and what our students need. In a recent survey we conducted in India, we found that close to 90% of government school teachers and private school teachers have smartphones, but only about 40% of teachers had laptops. And there's a huge difference in the two devices. The mobile is largely a consumption device, and a laptop will make teachers active and in a position to create their own content. So I think we will have to think of ways in which we provide more powerful technology devices in the hands of teachers, needless to say also for students. I think Anam pointed out the importance of the voices of teachers in this whole debate, and I think that's something we must pay much more attention to, because centralized responses, which is what technology really aids, centralization, that's simply not going to work. Education doesn't happen through centralized modes of functioning. Even teacher professional development doesn't happen through centralized modes of functioning. We'll have to look at how decentralization can be made to work and how teachers can be made and supported to find local solutions. And relating to that, the point that Dr. Panda made, that the country is very, very diverse, India and Africa. COVID is not everywhere. We'll have to look at very hybrid, differentiated responses in different areas. And to the extent possible, make the face-to-face experience as continuing to be the central of quality education for all, and see how the digital experience supplements and supports furthering this. I think we will have to look at hybrid solutions where we don't lose sight that the center of the learning is the face-to-face interaction. In fact, I don't think anybody is confident to say that online learning works for young children in the primary school years. So we'll really have to look at blended learning as the way forward. And I hope going forward in more webinars, we'll be discussing how we can blend learning more meaningfully, ensuring that there is safety and hygiene maintained, lowering risks, but at the same time enabling learning to continue. I think that is going to be something that we must wrap our heads around. And I think the point that Pranati Panda made about the need for very diverse hybrid solutions is very, very important. Robotapi spoke about the access question and how in the South Africa context, TV and radio are also being used to address providing content. And I think that's really important. But even more important, what he has pointed out that even in this context of crisis in South Africa, we are looking at standards for the sector. So simply because it's a crisis, we cannot throw out our core vision that we have achieved over the last 3-4 decades of struggle. You know, we've overcome access by and large in all our areas, countries. We have reached the quality question. We know that interactivity and children are at the center of the quality question. So this crisis should not lead to a situation where we throw off this basic achievement of all our governments. We should further this core through whatever methods that we use, and having standards to guide us will be very, very important. So I certainly hope that standards will continue to be, and the UNESCO standards are really very valuable, both the ICT and education standards that UNESCO has developed, as well as the standards in teaching, which is still a draft document, but it's very, very valuable. And I hope we will be looking at these and seeing how our responses align to the standards themselves. Professor Barasa spoke about how in many of our countries, we've already been integrating technology in various ways, because we've been wondering whether, technology enables us to address the teacher gaps, the vacancies, and those problems that many of our countries have. We have teacher shortages, and we've long been experimenting with technology as a way of addressing quality in the light of teacher shortages. So I think we have experience that we can build on. We should be confident about what doesn't work, set it aside, and continue to focus to further the things that work in our country contexts. So I hope that in future webinars, both between ICBA and India, we will really bring many more case studies of the kinds of technologies that can be blended and made to work in the kinds of contexts in which we are, which are resource-constrained contexts. We need technologies for resource-constrained context, and maybe that's what we should keep in the front as we have our next and future discussions. I think the question that how are voices of teachers heard is very, very important, and talking to unions is very important. We ourselves have been undertaking surveys, and we have found that already 30% of teachers are concerned that they will not keep their jobs in this condition, that they're going to lose their job. So there's enormous anxiety already. 30% is a large proportion of teachers who feel threatened of their own personal security in this condition. Over 70% of teachers are concerned about basic hygiene and their own safety. 40% of teachers have been using whatever means are available with them to reach out and make connection with students. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'm just wrapping up. All I wanted to say is that the teacher's voice is really important. And I think it will ensure that our designs, our responses really work on the ground. If we work with teachers, listen to them, and not just assume that we know what they're saying, but actually ask them and elicit responses for them. I think much more understanding of teachers' experience is going to really guide us going forward. And let's make sure that these decades of struggle to achieve status of teachers, all the discourses that we have built over the last 3-4 decades, that we continue to stand by them even this time of crisis. I think only that is going to show us the way forward in the post-COVID scenario. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed this interaction, and I look forward to the future ones that we will have. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Professor Padma Sarangapani, for that very brilliant concluding remarks. And we are looking forward to stronger collaboration between education systems of our 2 regions, India and Africa. So at this point, I would like to thank all the participants, and particularly those who have taken the floor to share experiences. Professor Sadbir Bedi, Professor Steve Nuokocha, Professor Pranati Panda, Professor Saroj Sharma, Mr. Enoch Rabotapi, Professor Peter Barasa, and Professor Radma Sarangapani for their valuable contribution to the success of this webinar. We look forward to stronger collaboration. So once again, thank you very much for joining. Thank you, dear participants. It was really a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.